Hey folks, how you doing? This is Wayne S. Pierce for American Liberty Radio Network. The music you're listening to is Shadow of Love by Jingle Punks. What a name. That's Jingle Punks, Shadow of Love, and that's, you can find that on YouTube, by the way. So, yeah. So, how you doing for the 5th of September, 2017? Had to take a breath there, folks. Yeah. Anywho, let me drive this point home by saying this, okay? I just want to put this out here because a lot of people who I associate with outside of the network, who I talk to, who I volunteer for, you know, they know about my podcast, and they say, well, as long as it doesn't affect or people might hear it and say, oh, is that place, you know, associated with? No, I don't. Let me just lay that to rest at the moment. Let me just, because people are going to think their own thing. People are going to think whatever it is they want to think. That's fine. Okay? That's fine. So I want to say this right off the bat in this mini podcast. I have a disclaimer, and the disclaimer is this, and I should record this and put this in the front of the show and everything like that. But here it goes. What I say on American Liberty Radio Podcast and the Truth Experience and the Wayne S. Pierce Show do not reflect the views and opinions of those that are not connected to or associated with me personally or my shows. Thank you. Okay? Just want to lay that out there. Just want to put that out there. Make that disclaimer public now because, you know, people are wondering. And that's fine. They can wonder all they want. So today I want to just, in this mini podcast, I want to highlight some of the stuff I talked about earlier. And I want you all to know, after that big heavy sigh, that there are certain things that I know, that I've researched this stuff. I've researched geopolitics, different societies, different cultures, different ways of looking at things, you know. I just, you know, I see this stuff. I know this stuff. This stuff, like, you know, it becomes second nature to me to, you know, to know this stuff. It's just second nature to me. Okay. After looking at all of this stuff, after examining all of this stuff and just putting everything into perspective, into just, you know, lining it all up and looking at it, I can tell you now, every so often I have to leave the studio to regroup and reset and really take that moment and say, you know what, I have to really just, you know, I got to step away from this for a little bit. And I'm okay with that. And other people have said, yeah, you got to do that, you know, and I'm fine with it. Okay, cool. The one thing that I've really have, the one thing that I don't want to say prided myself on because that sounds really arrogant and conceited, but the one thing I've noticed is that some of the stuff that I know is far beyond anything anyone else knows. Okay? It is. I mean, it's just amazing to me. It's amazing to me that the that the level of intellect that other people have is questionable, because I often look at them and say, don't you see this stuff yourself? Don't you understand that this is what's going on? Can you not see this? Can you not understand this? Sometimes they say they do, and sometimes they say they don't. What am I to believe? Okay? I say all that to get to this point. Everybody has a perspective. Everybody understands things a little bit easier and a little bit better than most. Some don't. And to those that don't really understand what is happening, and really to those that don't care, I'm going to say this. It's time you start to pay attention. It's time that you put down your just abolish your preconceived ideas. Get rid of everything that everyone has ever told you and look for the truth and the facts yourself. I don't want to belabor the issue, but you really have to pay attention. Okay? You really have to pay attention. Now, let me excuse me, a little something there. Let me highlight what I talked about earlier in my podcast, the American Liberty Radio podcast from earlier. Let me highlight a few things. I got a few things on the American Liberty Radio podcast page, so I'm going to lay some stuff on that on you from there. Okay. The whole issue with what is happening and all of that is it really begins to weigh on you when you look at stuff like this. Now, currently, just within the last several hours, we've heard that President Trump is rescinding the DACA, the D-A-C-K, it'll tell me here what that is. It's an acronym for, or it's the initials for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. That's the one. I knew I would find it. I knew I would. Fox News is reporting, and I hope to shout that this video on this page does not start. But New York Governor Cuomo threatens lawsuit if Trump ends Obama program. This came out yesterday. Okay. On Fox News. It's reported on Infowars.com as well. And the New York Governor Andrew Cuomo served notice Monday that he will sue if President Trump ends the Obama-era program that allows illegal immigrants who came to the U.S. as children to stay. That's New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo. He says, and I quote, "If he moves ahead with this cruel action, New York State will sue to protect the Dreamers and the state's sovereign interest in the fair and equal application of the law," unquote. Two things you got to search through here. State's sovereign interest. You know what that is? Sanctuary state. Just like California. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo wants a sanctuary state. Okay? Cuomo said the policy's end would impact 42,000 New York residents. Quote, "In New York, we are stepping up to protect immigrants," unquote. President Obama established the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program in 2012 to young children who came to the U.S. without legal status. In other words, that's a backdoor amnesty, folks. That's a backdoor amnesty. Has nothing to do with citizenship. That's a backdoor amnesty right there. According to data from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, about 790,000 people have been granted work permits under the program. President Trump is expected to end the program soon, sources have told Fox News, giving Congress 6 months to figure out a way to replace it. That's on American Liberty Radio podcast, folks. I wanted to highlight that today because that's what's going on in our country. Okay. That is what's going on in our country. As well as former George W. Bush Treasury official Bruce Bartlett claiming that, quote, all 100% of Trump supporters are racist, unquote. Okay? That's what's going on. That's on American Liberty Radio podcast as well. Just highlighting some of the stuff I talked about earlier. So, when we look at the very nature of the politics of the United States of America, and we look at the people who are involved in the political structure of the United States, we got a tremendous amount of psychopaths and sociopaths out there, including governors, including, a lot of people. But what is their ultimate purpose? What is their ultimate goal? What is their ultimate end game in all of this? And it literally is the end of the sovereignty of the citizens of the United States and the complete collapse of the United States of America. That's their end goal, folks. I'm not throwing this out there without having 40 years of research behind me. That's exactly their goal. Now, when I look at the very nature of what they are wanting, and I see how that is affecting born and raised citizens in the United States of America, I'm seeing a lot of my fellow citizens here getting very, very pissed off. But I also see a lot of reasonable and legal pushback against amnesty in its truest form, meaning the DACA, Deferred Action, Childhood, all that. All the immigration policies that have been put in place from George Bush to President Obama, George W., and President Obama, have had a tremendous amount of pushback by the citizens. Why? Because this is our country, and no one is going to come here, number one, without our knowledge, and number two, illegally. Okay? I'm pro-legal immigration. If you want to come here, you got to do it right. That's as far as I'm concerned. You don't like that, I don't care. Just a little FYI, it's not just Mexico. It's people from the Middle East. It's people from other countries that come here. Okay? So people in Turkey may want to come here and get away from their, massive mess that they got going on over there. They may want to come over here from Turkey, and they're more than welcome, but do it legally. I'll shake your hand and take you for a cup of coffee. I'm serious. But I'm figuratively speaking. I probably won't do that because I don't know where you are. So more than likely, people from other countries are going to see this DACA thing as a straight up don't come to our country. That's not what it is, because now Congress and President Trump has told Congress to go back and work out a deal, work out something that is going to replace this, but be reasonable in its process and application. I'm all for that, but I'm also for legal immigration. Okay? Now, what are we going to do with the, 42,000 people in New York that this affects? Are we going to round them up and send them home? I don't think it's a reasonable, I don't think it's difficult to do that, but I don't think it's reasonable either. Because if they came here, if the parents came here and the child was a year old or 2 years old or 5 years old, they grew up in this country in the last 10, 15, 20 years. What are you going to do? Pack them up and ship them off when this is the only country they knew anything about? That seems unreasonable to me. But, again, I'm a proponent and pro-legal immigration. I also believe we need to close the freaking borders. Because we do. We need to close them, period. Whatever reason you have to keep them open, you're dumb. We need to close them. How are we going to do that? I have a solution you may not like, but it's a solution. Bring the military back home and put them on the southern borders and put the ships out in the ocean. That's what you need to do. Somebody needs to go over here into North Korea, and I'll talk about that here in a second too. They need to go to North Korea and whip that Kim Jong cheeseburger's butt and tell him to knock his stuff off and go to his room. China is kind of upset with that little fat person over there running things in North Korea. Russia is playing referee, if not trying to dispel and discourage action from the United States. Did you know that? This whole mess coming out of North Korea is it's a freaking mess, man. Let's cut this stuff off and just I'm done. Hey, just to let you know, I know that I was thinking earlier about doing a live broadcast tonight at 7 Pacific and 10 Eastern, but I decided to put this little mini podcast together. So how would you, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to a little interaction from you, okay? Go to American Liberty Radio Network on Facebook and tell me, American Liberty Radio Network on Facebook. Drop in a comment there as well. How do you want me to do this show? I have some ideas. I'm going to toss them out here next week and let you know what I've decided to do. But I need your interaction from this. And one of the things I've decided to do is next week, I'm going to do my podcast, my daily American Liberty Radio podcast. I'm going to do those daily. But once a week, I'm going to have a live show and hopefully have guests on. So is that good? Would you listen to that show? So let me know. Go to American Liberty Radio Network on Facebook and let me know. So anyway, so that's what I'm doing. I've got some other things going on and brewing behind the scenes here as well. I not only run American Liberty Radio Network, but I also run New West Radio Theater, which is a radio, those old-time radio shows that you've heard back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, if you're old enough to remember those. Remember those things? Yeah, anyway. What's radio? Yeah, I know. Some people are going to say that. But that's what I do as well. I write radio plays, radio dramas, and stuff like that. And I do voices and I do voiceovers. And I currently am working on one now. We have a season ender coming up for a current radio drama that I've created. So if you want to know more about that, you can go to newwestradiothéâtre.weebly.com, newwestradiothéâtre.weebly.com. Check it out. Let me know what you think. Email me from there. But that's other things I do as well. So the one thing that I want to talk about here just in the closing of this little mini podcast is, I talked a little bit about it, highlighted it a little bit in the beginning, but people's perspective. Okay. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. As a matter of fact, I know they will, and I'll disagree with them if I don't, have any type of affinity to what they're saying. But people's perspective. Everyone has a particular perspective. I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but if you stand up and you just stand there, you just look straight ahead, don't move your eyes, don't move your head, don't do nothing, just stand there and look straight ahead. That's your perspective, because you can see peripherally, there we go, and you can see straight ahead. And your varying perceptions are the result of moving your eyes around. Don't move your body, don't move your head, just move your eyes. You're getting different perceptions from your perspective where you're standing. And the varying perspectives that you have result in having various perceptions from those perspectives. Now, turn your body. You'll look one way, or walk around the room, or go to another room, or walk outside. That's a different perspective, and you will have a different perception of it all. Now, I say that because I use my art talent and my art education to show you different perspectives. You artists out there know what I'm talking about. That's exactly how we see things. Now, our interpretation of those things it's literally the result of our interpretation is based upon what we can compare other things with, what we're perceiving. Okay? We know this. We understand this. We interpret, as artists, we interpret what we see and we put it on canvas, or we, do whatever, or we draw it. And that's what we do. So when you look, I use all that to say this, when you look at the world and you look at the leaders and you look at the countries and you examine their purpose, their perspectives, their understanding, their interpretations of the United States or some other country or whatever, or they have their own perspective. Everybody that I encounter, everybody you encounter, every coworker you have has a varying perspective of something, whatever it may be. Are they right or wrong? And here's my point. No one is completely right and no one is completely wrong. They just have varying perspectives, and their perception of what they're seeing is, I'm going to say, usually and normally misperceived, so they have a misinterpretation of what they're seeing. Couple that with the disinformation that's out there, and you've got one confused individual. But their perspective, if they were to just go back into their room and forget everything or dump everything they were thinking, their preconceived ideas, whatever anybody has told them, and they start over and they begin to look at all of these things from fresh eyes, from a fresh perspective, they'll see exactly what they need to see. And everything that I myself and Nick Tucker and Brian Lang and John LeBang and Robert Bruce and Alex Jones and Rush Limbaugh, everything that these people have talked about will be seen from a new perspective, and they will see it for what it truly is instead of what somebody else told them it should be. Now, I know I said all that, and I took you to school there for the last 10 minutes or so, but literally, we have to really pay attention to where we are and what we're looking at. And if we don't understand what it is we're looking at, we need to get educated on those things, and we literally need to understand what it is. We can't go through life blind as we have been in the last, 100 years? We can't. The globalists took over Congress and took over these industrialized nations long before President Woodrow Wilson in 1913 signing the Internal Revenue Act and the Federal Reserve Act. These people wanted to collapse the United States of America, and one of our presidents, Ulysses S. Grant, signed the Act of 1871, basically handing over the United States of America to the British, again. And we fought like hell getting away from them. But in 1871, President Ulysses S. Grant went, we're broke. We need some money. Can you help us out? So he signed the deed over to the people that we got away from. And if you look at your tax dollars and if you track the money, track it, literally, track the money, you will see that it goes into certain corporations that have what are those called? Holding companies that are basically owned by the Queen herself. Why do you think she makes so much damn money? Her sister, the Queen Beatrix, I think is what it is, over at Belgium, I think. Is it Belgium? Correct me if I'm wrong. Same thing. Same thing. 3 world powers exist. The Vatican, Washington, D.C., and the City of London. Those 3 entities exist within the countries of their origin, and they control everything in the world. Why do you think the Catholic Church is so damn rich? They got their hands in shipping. They got their hands in weaponry. They got their hands in research. They got their hands in, they got their hands in, space. Yeah, go look that up. The Vatican has its own radio telescope or telescope that they use. Yeah, go look it up. Interesting, isn't it? So those are the 3 world powers, or the 3 entities in the world that pretty much control everything. We went from 60 to 70 different media corporations down to how many as of 2015? And in the last 2 years, they've been inundating our airwaves with nothing but leftist propaganda. Yeah, check it out. Go ahead. Oh my God, I didn't even take a break for this, but I'm going to do it right now. So I'll talk to you guys tomorrow on the American Liberty Radio Network podcast. So, check it out, folks. AmericanLibertyRadio.weebly.com. AmericanLibertyRadio.weebly.com. Sharing the truth one fact at a time without all the BS.
Greetings, this is John LeBang of The John LeBang Show, and you're listening to the American Liberty Radio Network.
Late Night in the Midlands is an alternative media that covers the truth, theory, and fact that the lamestream media won't talk about. We cover everything from the known and the unknown, the normal and the paranormal, the government lies and the government ties, and even their thrive. We tell what's coming, what's going, whether it be politics or archaeologists. We have an amazing fan base, and our shows are all archived to be heard millions of times more. So tell your friends, your family, and anybody you care about LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Become a member and be informed.
Growing up terrestrial radio, the future is here. Destroying the liberal media one truth bomb at a time. Independent media is shattering the liberal national security media into a million pieces. Their views of the world are based on the script the government gives them. Independent media seeks out and finds the truth and reports on what is truly going on behind the scenes. Support the truth and facts. Support independent media.